The morning sun spilled golden light across the towering glass headquarters of Uber, reflecting off the sleek vehicles lined outside. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with that familiar blend of high-stakes energy and subtle tension that comes with running a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. At the center of it all sat Amara Johnson, the newly appointed CEO, a striking black woman whose reputation preceded her like a lightning rod. Known for her razor-sharp intellect, her uncanny ability to read both people and markets, and her unapologetic confidence, she had shattered glass ceilings across continents, but even she could feel the pressure weighing down like an invisible force in the boardroom that morning. Amara had only been in the CEO role for 6 months, yet already she faced one of the most complex crises in Uber's history. The company had signed a series of international partnerships worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but a misstep in legal contracts, combined with a cultural misunderstanding in negotiations abroad, had put $500 million of investment at risk. She could feel the tension radiating from her team of executives, many of whom were seasoned but hesitant under her bold leadership style. Their eyes flickered between her and the large screen projecting graphs, projections, and legal clauses, waiting for her to take the first step. The problem, at its core, was linguistic. The company was negotiating deals in 9 different languages: Mandarin, Arabic, French, Spanish, German, Japanese, Hindi, Portuguese, and Russian. Each deal had its own subtleties, each language its own idioms and expressions that could subtly alter the interpretation of legally binding contracts. One wrong phrase could undo months of planning, or worse, cost the company millions. Some of the executives had tried to handle translations through standard channels, but automated translations were failing, leaving room for error that could snowball into a disaster. The stakes were massive, and Amara knew there was only one person who could navigate the minefield with precision: herself. She exhaled, calm on the outside but alert inside, and turned to her assistant, a young woman named Lila who had been working closely with her for 3 years. "Get me the contracts from all 9 regions," Amara said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Lila nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she compiled hundreds of pages of legal documents and notes from translators who had already been trying, and failing, to bridge the language gaps. Amara started with Mandarin, her fingers flying across the tablet as she dissected every sentence, cross-referencing idioms, legal terms, and cultural nuances. A clause about flexible ride-hailing rates was being misinterpreted as a mandate for fixed pricing, which could have violated local regulations in Shanghai. In French, a clause about liability insurance coverage for autonomous vehicles was dangerously ambiguous. Spanish contracts referenced policies that did not exist, which, if miscommunicated, could have led to lawsuits in Mexico City. Her team watched in awe as Amara toggled seamlessly between languages, sometimes pausing to murmur phrases under her breath in perfect pronunciation, then explaining the subtle legal implications to the board. "They've used the term responsabilidad limitada here," she said, pointing to a highlighted line in a Mexican contract. "Literally, it says limited responsibility, but the implied meaning could expose us to unlimited liability if a rider challenges the clause. We need to rephrase carefully to align with both local law and company policy." The room fell silent as she moved on to Arabic, her eyes scanning contracts that had been sent over with literal translations that lost every ounce of subtlety. Here, the word tajdid is mistranslated as renewal, but in this legal context it could mean extension of responsibility indefinitely. "That's not acceptable," she explained, her tone precise, her voice commanding. Each executive nodded, realizing that every word she corrected was saving the company millions of dollars. But it wasn't just about language, it was also about cultural nuance. Amara had spent years traveling the globe, not just learning languages but immersing herself in local business etiquette, understanding how cultural norms influence decision-making and contract interpretation. In Japan, she knew that a polite refusal was often implied rather than explicitly stated. A poorly phrased clause could easily be misread as disrespectful or aggressive, sabotaging years of goodwill. In Germany, contracts required exact precision. Even a single ambiguous word could invalidate an entire section. As the morning turned into afternoon, Amara's fingers never stopped moving. She cross-referenced legal clauses with cultural notes, corrected translations, and even wrote explanatory memos for foreign partners to ensure nothing would be misinterpreted. Her team took turns bringing her coffee and snacks, but she barely noticed. The crisis that could have toppled the company from its global stronghold was being dismantled word by a woman who not only spoke 9 languages fluently but understood the world behind each language. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke her focus. It was the lead international lawyer, Mr. Carlson, a man with decades of experience in multinational corporate law. "Amara, we just received a notice from the Singapore regulatory body," he said, holding a thick envelope. "They've flagged a clause in our Southeast Asia operations as potentially non-compliant. They want revisions immediately, or they will freeze part of our operations." Amara didn't flinch. She motioned for him to bring the documents. As she scanned the page written in Malay with heavy legal terminology influenced by English phrasing, her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. She could read not just the words but the intent, the hidden implications, and the potential loopholes. Within minutes, she drafted a precise response, carefully rewording clauses, and referencing local law and prior agreements to protect Uber's interests. By the time the sun had started to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the Uber headquarters, Amara had successfully reviewed and corrected contracts from every region, navigating a labyrinth of languages, legal systems, and cultural nuances. Her team, exhausted but inspired, watched her lean back in her chair, finally allowing herself a small sigh of relief. The $500 million disaster had been averted, and the company's reputation remained intact, thanks to a combination of linguistic brilliance, cultural intelligence, and sheer determination. And yet, for Amara, this was just another day. She had always known that her greatest strength wasn't just her intellect, it was her ability to communicate, connect, and understand the world on a level that transcended borders and languages. As she looked out at the city skyline, she felt a quiet pride and an even deeper resolve. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new markets, and new deals, but if today had proven anything, it was that she was more than capable of saving a company with nothing but her mind, her experience, and the languages she had mastered. But little did she know, an unexpected twist was about to test not only her linguistic skills but her ability to inspire loyalty, trust, and courage in her team in ways she had never imagined. The morning after the contract crisis, Uber headquarters hummed with cautious optimism. Amara Johnson had slept only a few hours, but even in her exhaustion, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Yet, as she walked into the boardroom that day, a different kind of tension awaited her. An urgent message flashed across her phone: critical, cybersecurity breach in EU operations. Immediate action required. Amara's eyes narrowed. The last thing Uber could afford was a data breach, especially in Europe where privacy laws were notoriously strict. If sensitive user data was exposed, fines could reach into hundreds of millions of dollars, not to mention the irreparable damage to the company's reputation. Her mind raced as she called in her cybersecurity team, a group of highly specialized experts who had been monitoring the situation. "What's the extent of the breach?" she asked, already scanning data logs with rapid precision. "It appears to be a coordinated attack across multiple regions, including France, Germany, and Spain," said Ivan, the lead analyst. "The hackers are exploiting loopholes in our legacy systems. They've already accessed limited user information, but if we don't contain it now, it could go global within hours." Amara didn't panic. Instead, she activated a plan that only she could execute. Over the years, she had learned to combine her mastery of languages with her ability to read people and systems like an open book. She realized that the hackers, though technically skilled, were relying on automated tools to navigate linguistic and cultural barriers in the contracts and cybersecurity protocols. They didn't account for someone like her who could anticipate their moves across 9 languages and multiple regulatory environments simultaneously. Amara split the team into small units, assigning each to focus on one region. She herself tackled the French and German segments, rapidly reviewing logs, decoding error messages, and tracing suspicious activity. She noticed that in Germany, the hackers were misinterpreting a compliance alert that was written in nuanced legal German. A simple phrase they misunderstood caused them to reroute their attack into a trap Amara had quickly devised, containing the threat before it could spread further. Meanwhile, she instructed Ivan to craft alerts in Mandarin, Japanese, and Arabic, languages the hackers would be least familiar with in the context of corporate cybersecurity. Each alert contained decoy files and misleading system commands that would confuse and delay them. Her plan required precision and speed, but Amara's mastery of languages allowed her to manipulate both human and machine responses seamlessly. As she worked, her mind wandered briefly to the people at risk. Uber wasn't just a company, it was a service used by millions daily. Families relied on it to get to school, offices, and hospitals. Drivers depended on it for their livelihood. The pressure was immense, but for Amara, it was also deeply personal. She had built her career on being a problem solver, on turning chaos into order. And this was the ultimate test of everything she had learned. Hours passed, the room thick with tension, as executives and analysts worked around the clock. Amara's multilingual abilities became even more critical when a hacker group attempted to send false communications to Uber's European offices, trying to manipulate employees into giving system access. She quickly intercepted the messages, translating them in real time, and instructed staff on exactly how to respond safely. By late afternoon, the breach was largely contained, but Amara wasn't finished. A hidden secondary attack had been initiated in Spain, exploiting a loophole in legal Spanish terms she had previously corrected in a contract the week before. This was the moment that froze every executive in the room. "This is the $500 million mistake all over again," muttered one, panic creeping into his voice. Amara's calm smile reassured them. "No," she said firmly, "this is exactly why we prevented the $500 million loss last week. The contracts weren't just words on paper, they were shields we can deploy in crises like this." Her team watched as she rapidly referenced a clause in Spanish about liability limits, using her precise knowledge of legal language to reconfigure system alerts that neutralized the hacker's secondary attack. Then came the unexpected. A message appeared from a mysterious source, a hacker claiming to have insider knowledge of Uber's operations. The message was in all 9 languages, switching mid-sentence, almost as if taunting her. Most people would have panicked, but Amara felt a spark of excitement. She realized the hacker didn't know that she could read all 9 languages fluently, and that each line of the message contained a clue to the next step of the attack. With breathtaking speed, she decoded the messages, each language revealing a piece of the puzzle. Mandarin hinted at server vulnerabilities, Arabic suggested timing windows, German revealed file paths, and Japanese concealed encryption keys. Piece by piece, she reconstructed the entire attack plan, faster than any automated system could react. And then, in a move that shocked even her most loyal executives, she turned the attack back on the hackers. Through a combination of multilingual communication and clever system manipulation, she made the hackers believe they were still penetrating Uber's servers, while actually feeding them decoy data and triggering trace alerts that allowed authorities to locate the source. Within minutes, the hackers were exposed, their operation dismantled, and Uber's European operations remained intact. The boardroom erupted in awe. Amara, for the first time that day, allowed herself to lean back, a small smile on her face. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady but filled with quiet triumph, "this is why understanding the world in multiple languages isn't just a skill, it's survival. Not just for me, but for the entire company." It wasn't just her linguistic mastery that had saved the day, it was her courage, her ability to stay calm under pressure, and her relentless determination to protect everyone who depended on her leadership. Her team had witnessed firsthand how a CEO could turn what seemed like an impossible crisis into a victory, simply by thinking differently, globally, and bravely. As she left the boardroom, exhausted but invigorated, Amara knew that this was more than just a professional triumph. She had earned the unwavering trust of her team, demonstrated that innovation and intelligence could overcome even the most sophisticated threats, and proven, once again, that her position at the helm of Uber was not only deserved, it was indispensable. Yet in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake a lingering thought: if hackers could attempt something so bold today, what new challenge would tomorrow bring? She smiled faintly, already anticipating the next puzzle the world would throw at her. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the story of how a black woman CEO spoke 9 languages and saved a $500 million empire was only beginning to unfold. The morning after the cybersecurity victory, Uber's headquarters felt different. There was a quiet buzz of admiration running through the corridors. Employees whispered about the CEO who had not only saved the company but also outsmarted hackers across 9 languages. Amara Johnson walked through the halls, her posture calm but her mind racing. She knew the crisis had not just been about computers or contracts, it had exposed vulnerabilities in trust, in leadership, and in human nature itself. As she entered the executive floor, a subtle tension hit her. A select group of board members had requested an emergency meeting. Their faces were composed, but she could see the faint flicker of unease in their eyes. One of them, a longtime director named Victor Crane, who had quietly eyed the CEO position before her appointment, was the first to speak. "Amara, we appreciate your efforts," he began, voice carefully neutral, "but some of us feel that relying solely on your personal intervention for critical issues is risky. What if you were unavailable next time?" Amara's gaze sharpened. She had anticipated resistance, not from outsiders, but from insiders who felt threatened by her ability to think and act globally. "And yet," she said, her voice measured but firm, "the company's $500 million in assets remained intact because I acted. If relying on expertise and skills is a risk, perhaps we need to redefine what risk means." The room remained silent, tension thickening. Victor leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "It's not just about expertise, Amara. Some of us are concerned about over-centralization of decision-making. We need systems, not just one person's brilliance." Amara felt a spark of frustration but masked it behind a calm exterior. She knew that this wasn't personal, it was fear disguised as protocol. And she had a plan for that too. She smiled faintly, then tapped a small button on her tablet, connecting her live translation interface. "Then let's test the system," she said, voice steady. "I've been working on a multilingual crisis simulation for all board members. You'll see exactly why global expertise and linguistic understanding cannot be replaced." Within minutes, the room was transformed into a virtual command center. On the screens, simulated crises unfolded in real time: a sudden contractual dispute in Brazil, a compliance issue in Japan, and a fake cyberattack in France. Each scenario required precise understanding of local law, language nuances, and cultural norms. The board members fumbled through instructions, mistranslating terms, and misreading critical alerts. It was a controlled chaos that highlighted the gap between theoretical management and practical execution. Amara calmly navigated each scenario, switching effortlessly between languages and legal frameworks, correcting misunderstandings, and providing guidance to the international teams she had deployed. She explained that in Brazil, the term responsabilidade civil was being misinterpreted as full liability, which could have led to a lawsuit worth millions. In Japan, a subtle honorific in communication determined whether a regulatory agency would cooperate or shut down operations. And in France, a slight misinterpretation of GDPR compliance could have triggered severe fines. Victor and the other directors were visibly shaken. One by one, they realized that no matter how skilled, they lacked the multilingual and cultural literacy that Amara brought to the table. She wasn't just translating words, she was interpreting intent, protecting millions, and aligning diverse legal frameworks simultaneously. But even as her mastery shone through, Amara sensed something deeper brewing, a silent resistance not just to her methods, but to her very presence as a black woman leading a global tech giant. She had faced prejudice before, subtle but persistent, and she understood that power often attracts envy. Still, she refused to be intimidated. Instead, she leveraged the moment to show not just competence but leadership. She invited board members to ask questions directly in the languages of their regions, challenging them to test the limits of their own understanding. The exercise revealed a stark truth: the company needed both her intellect and her experience, and nothing less would suffice. Just when it seemed the meeting had reached a turning point, a message appeared on her secure device: an internal leak. Someone had attempted to sell sensitive company information to an international competitor. The betrayal was close, and the implications were enormous. Amara's stomach tightened. It wasn't just hackers or legal misunderstandings anymore, it was a threat from within, someone who knew Uber's inner workings. She immediately called a discreet emergency task force, comprising her most trusted executives and cybersecurity specialists. Using her linguistic skills, she tracked internal communications, identifying coded messages in emails, texts, and even voice notes. Within hours, she had narrowed the suspect list down to a few individuals, one of whom was actively negotiating with a rival company in Spanish and Arabic simultaneously, both languages Amara could read fluently. Her heart pounded as she intercepted the communications in real time. The individual was attempting to manipulate contract terms and financial data to make Uber appear unstable, hoping to benefit personally while causing maximum disruption. But Amara had anticipated this. She used her multilingual expertise to create false leads and misinformation, making the internal saboteur believe their plan was progressing while she quietly collected evidence to neutralize the threat. By evening, the saboteur was caught, and the evidence was irrefutable. The board watched in stunned silence as Amara presented her findings, not just exposing the betrayal but also demonstrating how linguistic mastery and global awareness could prevent even the most sophisticated internal sabotage. Victor Crane, who had questioned her earlier, looked down, embarrassed and awed. Amara's presence had not only saved Uber but had uncovered a hidden threat that could have crippled the company if mishandled. As she left the boardroom that night, exhaustion finally crept in, but so did a profound sense of accomplishment. The challenges had grown more complex, the stakes higher, yet she had navigated them with clarity, courage, and intellect. She knew the world would continue to test her, both externally and internally, but she had proven one undeniable truth: her voice, her skills, and her perspective were irreplaceable assets to a global empire. And as the lights of the city reflected off the Uber headquarters, Amara allowed herself a small, victorious smile. She had turned adversity into opportunity, mistrust into evidence, and crisis into triumph. But deep inside, she felt a pulse of excitement, because she knew the next challenge would be even more personal, one that would test not just her intellect but her heart. The days following the internal sabotage incident felt surreal. Uber was secure, the board now fully aligned behind Amara, and the company's global partners were sending messages of admiration for her decisive leadership. Yet, for Amara Johnson, the victory felt incomplete. The world of corporate success was thrilling, but there was one lingering question she couldn't ignore: how far could her influence extend when personal stakes intertwined with professional ones? It came sooner than expected. One morning, a cryptic email appeared in her inbox, written in all 9 languages she had mastered. Each segment contained fragmented threats and warnings, almost taunting her. The sender claimed to represent an international consortium intent on undermining Uber's global expansion. Their plan was audacious: manipulate regional laws, exploit cultural misinterpretations, and create a cascading financial collapse. It was one thing to defend against hackers or internal traitors, it was another to confront a coordinated multinational attack designed to destabilize the empire she had worked tirelessly to build. Amara leaned back in her chair, the glow of her laptop reflecting in her determined eyes. She smiled faintly, almost as if greeting an old friend. She had trained for this her entire life, mastering languages not just to communicate but to anticipate intent, decode nuance, and foresee consequences invisible to others. This was the moment where her skills, reputation, and intuition would converge. The consortium's first strike came through Asia. A strategic partnership in Japan was at risk due to a deliberately mistranslated legal clause, and local regulators had been subtly misinformed about Uber's operational compliance. Without intervention, fines could reach hundreds of millions and stall their expansion entirely. Amara switched instantly into action mode. Fluent in Japanese and versed in the legal framework, she navigated the intricate web of cultural etiquette and contractual precision, personally drafting clarifications and sending them through official channels. Her ability to anticipate how each phrase could be interpreted meant regulators received her communication in exactly the way intended: respectful, precise, and legally binding. Within hours, the crisis was averted. Next came Europe. The consortium had orchestrated a financial rumor campaign across Germany, France, and Spain. Stock prices fluctuated as false information spread, designed to induce panic. Amara, however, had already predicted this tactic. She coordinated with her multilingual media team, drafting carefully worded press releases and investor communications in each region's native language, ensuring accuracy and eliminating ambiguity. She appeared in live press briefings, speaking directly in German, French, and Spanish, projecting authority and clarity. Each word she uttered diffused tension and restored confidence. Investors and regulators alike were reassured that Uber was stable, secure, and fully compliant. But the final blow came unexpectedly, and personally. The consortium had discovered a weak link in her team, a young multilingual analyst named Lila, who had been assisting Amara for years. They kidnapped Lila during an overseas reconnaissance mission, intending to leverage her to manipulate Amara's decisions. When Amara received the ransom message, her heart pounded. She had faced hackers, traitors, and crises across continents, but this was different. It was personal. Calm but resolute, she called her most trusted security specialists and crafted a rescue plan. Using her knowledge of Lila's languages and cultural tendencies, she anticipated the consortium's next moves. Every message they sent was decoded and analyzed for intent. She coordinated a covert extraction operation, directing teams in multiple countries simultaneously. Hours later, in a tense and cinematic sequence, Lila was safely rescued. Amara's strategic genius had allowed them to track the perpetrators, anticipate their movements, and execute a flawless operation without any harm to her team member. The boardroom erupted in stunned applause when Amara delivered the news, but her focus remained on the bigger picture. She had defended her company, her people, and her integrity. The consortium, realizing they had underestimated her, attempted one final effort, an offer of compromise, proposing enormous sums of money in exchange for insider information and control over Uber's international strategies. Amara reviewed the message calmly. With a smile of quiet authority, she replied, not with threats, not with negotiations, but with a firm and unyielding refusal. Our company, our employees, and our values are non-negotiable, she wrote in 9 languages simultaneously, a testament to her mastery and confidence. That evening, as she looked out over the city from her corner office, Amara allowed herself to breathe. The crisis had been more than a test of intelligence, it had been a test of courage, empathy, and leadership. She had faced threats to her company, her employees, and even the people closest to her, yet had emerged not only victorious but unshaken in purpose and conviction. Her team, inspired and loyal, rallied around her like never before. Investors renewed their confidence, partners worldwide sent accolades, and her employees knew that they were led by someone whose skill transcended the ordinary. Amara understood then that her ability to communicate, understand, and act across cultures and languages was not just a professional advantage, it was her superpower. As night settled over the city, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the countless hours learning languages, navigating corporate and cultural challenges, and mastering the art of seeing beyond words to intent. She realized that true leadership wasn't about power or control, it was about connection, insight, and the courage to act when everything is at stake. And in that quiet moment, she smiled, not because she had defeated adversaries or saved millions, but because she knew she had proven something far more profound, that a woman of vision, intelligence, and heart could change the course of a global empire, protect her people, and face any challenge the world threw at her, all while remaining true to herself. Uber's headquarters, glowing in the night, was no longer just a symbol of corporate success, it was a testament to the brilliance, courage, and indomitable spirit of Amara Johnson, the black woman CEO who had saved a $500 million business with nothing but her intellect, empathy, and mastery of 9 languages. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the story of her leadership would inspire generations to come, not because of the money saved or the crises averted, but because of the power of knowledge, integrity, and courage in a world that constantly tests the limits of both.